Hello and welcome to Lantern Lane Stories. Tonight's story is When the Water Spirits Rise. Olena was 6 years old and lived in Kyiv, a city with wide streets and tall buildings. But her favorite place was near the Dnipro River, where willow trees dipped their long branches into the water. One evening in early June, her grandmother called her to the kitchen. The light was golden. Olena's grandmother had wrinkled hands and kind eyes. "Olena, come sit," she said. "There is something you must know." Olena climbed onto a wooden chair. Her grandmother poured milk for her. It was still warm. "Tonight, the Rusalnaya week begins," said her grandmother. "Do you know what that means?" Olena shook her head. The milk was creamy and tasted like cinnamon. "It is the time when the water spirits wake," said grandmother. "They come up from the deep places." "Water spirits?" asked Olena. Her voice was small. "Not scary ones," said grandmother, and she smiled. "They are the Rusalki, the water maidens of old stories." Grandmother sat back in her chair. Outside, the sky was turning pink. "Long, long ago," said grandmother, "the Slavic people believed that lakes and rivers held water spirits. They called them Rusalki." She poured tea for herself. The cup was blue and white. "Each Rusalka was once something else," grandmother continued. "Some say they were young girls. Others say they were souls of children who never lived above." Olena listened. She did not interrupt. "The Rusalki lived in cool water, singing and dancing," said grandmother. "They were lonely sometimes. They wanted to know the world above the water." "Did they come out?" asked Olena. "Once a year," said grandmother. "In early summer, when willow trees were green and full, the Rusalki would rise at night. They would climb into the trees. They would dance in moonlight until dawn." Olena imagined it. Water, moonlight, the bend of a willow branch. "But here's what the old people knew," said grandmother, and she leaned close. "During that week, during Rusalnaya week, they would not bathe in the river. They would not swim. They would not even wash clothes at water's edge." "Why not?" asked Olena. "Because," said grandmother, "if the Rusalki danced and you joined them, you would have to dance until you could not stand. You would become like them, a water spirit forever." Olena shivered, not from fear, from wonder. The next day, Olena and her grandmother walked toward the river. The air was warm and thick. It smelled like grass and wet earth. The willow trees were waiting. Their branches hung down like long, pale green hair. They touched the water. "Look," said grandmother, pointing with one finger. "Can you see how the branches move?" Olena looked. The willow trees were swaying, though there was almost no wind. "They know," said grandmother. "They are ready for the Rusalki to arrive." All week, Olena watched the trees. At noon, they stood still. But at sunset, they seemed to shiver. At night, when the moon rose, the branches danced. On the third night of Rusalnaya week, Olena heard something. She was in bed. The window was open. A sound came from far away, across the city from the direction of the river. It was like singing, but not words. Like laughter, but not loud. Like wind through trees, but shaped like a voice. Olena sat up. She was not afraid. She whispered. But grandmother was already there in the doorway. She was wearing her old shawl, the one with blue embroidery. "They are here," said grandmother softly. "The Rusalki, they are dancing in the willow trees." Olena went to the window. She could not see the river from her room, but she could hear it. The sound came and went, like breathing. "What do they sound like?" asked Olena. "Like water," said grandmother. "Like moonlight. Like a memory you had when you were very small." The next morning, grandmother took Olena to the market. They bought bread that was still warm. They bought cheese wrapped in paper. "The Rusalnaya week will last 6 more days," said grandmother. Then the Rusalki will slip back into the deep water. They will sleep until next year. Will we see them again? Asked Olena. Not see, said grandmother, but feel. Every summer when it is warm, when the willow trees are full of green, you will remember that the Rusalki are near. You will remember that the world is full of old magic, of stories that lived before you were born and will live long after. Olena held the bread against her chest. It was warm like a small animal. In a far city called Prague, said grandmother, there is a great concert hall. A long time ago, a man named Dvorak heard the story of the Rusalki. He was a composer, a man who made music from stories. He made a whole opera about them. It is called Rusalka. An opera? Said Olena. A long, long song, said grandmother, with a prince and a water maiden and magic and sadness. People still sing it, people still listen. Olena thought about this, a legend so strong that it became music. Music that traveled to other countries, music that made people remember. When I am older, said Olena, will I hear it? Yes, said grandmother. And when you do, you will think of Kyiv. You will think of the willow trees. You will think of the water spirits who live in the deep places, waiting for summer. That evening, Olena stood by her window. The sun was setting orange and red. The city was settling into quiet. Above, the first stars were appearing. She thought about the Rusalki beneath the Dnipro River. She thought about the willow trees swaying in the moonlight. She thought about grandmother's words. That magic was real. That old stories were worth remembering. That a water spirit song could travel across centuries and become an opera. The city grew quieter. The sky grew darker, the willow trees by the river swayed, preparing for another night of Rusalnaya week. And so, Kyiv also slowly fell asleep. Good night.